So I'm going to sow some spinach today, and the variety I've chosen for today is this Minopa, and the reason for this is it's a really nice salad spinach. It's very sweet because it's low in oxalic acid, and there's nothing inherently terrible about oxalic acid. You just don't want to eat too much of it, probably no more than perhaps 3 servings, big servings of spinach a week, something like that. And it doesn't affect everybody, but anyway, this is the way I prepare the tray. Always the same, just really firm in the compost into these modules to make sure they're fully kind of expanded, and then I'll refill these and give them another press down, and then I'll refill them again and make my planting holes. Now, somebody mentioned the other day that they are planting all their seeds 2 seed depths deep, and I think that's really bad advice that they've been given. I tend to plant most of my seeds about 1 centimetre deep, unless they're big seeds. So beetroot a little bit deeper than that, for example, and obviously peas maybe 2 centimetres deep or something like that. So maybe for the big seeds, twice the seed depth, but for onions and lettuce and spinach and things like that, much better to do them about 1 centimetre deep. Now there's 3 real ways to sow spinach. One is just direct in the ground, as per the seed packet. I won't go into that. Other than say, I don't do it that way. I think it's much better to do it in modules. And there's 2 ways to do it in modules. So the first way is like this, where I just put loads of seeds into a little tray, and then I prick them out and I plant them. I'll show you that in a minute. And the other way is to put the seeds directly 1 centimetre deep into the module tray. Now if you do that, you'll probably be better off putting 2 or 3 seeds in each hole, and that'll guarantee that you'll get 100% germination in that every module cell will have at least 1 seed in it. Some will have 2 and some will have 3. And that's a great way, I think, of sowing seeds, where the seeds are going to be growing on in mid to late spring, the seedlings, and or summer, because then there's lots of nutrients available in the ground, and there's lots of sunlight and lots of warmth. Now if you're going to be sowing in autumn for plants that are going to grow over winter, or late winter, very early spring for plants that are going to grow to maturity in spring, early spring, then I think it's better to sow them like this, prick them out, and just put 1 seedling per module. And again, that's because there's less nutrients bioavailable in the ground, there's less light, and there's less warmth. So just giving those seedlings a bit more space makes a lot of sense. Now the other reason to do it like this in a seed tray is if you've got a lot of old seed to use up. Now I have, and these, which are Medania, the germination rate on those was about, I would say, 30%. So I put a whole seed packet in there, and that's how many seedlings I got, so not so many. And this was America. I've just pricked these out, and again the germination was maybe 30% or something like that. Now that doesn't matter. Bung a whole seed tray in, a whole seed packet in, and you get plenty of seedlings for a full tray. When you prick them out, it's just a lot more convenient, I think, to do it that way with old seed. So I thought I'd just show you these. So that's a tray that I did 2 or 3 days ago. That's a tray that I did yesterday, and they're all looking really quite nice. I'm really happy with those, and they're going to grow into nice strong plants. So I've got these under grow lights. When I'm growing under lights with spinach, I actually reduced the amount of time the lights are on down to about 12 hours a day, which isn't a lot, and you could definitely go higher than that for things like lettuces, and these are little lettuces here. But for spinach, once it goes above about 14 hours a day under the high intensity lights, then you do risk them going to seed too early. So I just, on the cautious side, just means your seedlings take about an extra week to come to maturity, which is no big deal for me. So although today I'm not actually pricking out any seedlings, I'll just do a couple just to show you, and I'll just manoeuvre the compost up like that, just tease a seedling out. Now you can see here, this is a lot of root on here. It's kind of amazing really when you see how shallow that tray is, and that had all that root in it. And so you do need to make a fairly big hole. So I'm going to go all the way down into that hole with my finger, and I'm going to drop that in, and it won't go in. So I'm going to get just the end of there of the seedling where it joins the roots. I'm going to get my finger, I'm just going to push it in like that, and then I'll just firm the soil in around it. And I'll do a little bit better than that if I had two hands, and just pop a little bit more compost in. So that's a little bit fiddly, but obviously it's much quicker than that if you're doing it with two hands. So I'll do it again. I want my finger all the way down there to the bottom of the module. Just get one more seedling. Well, that doesn't have as much root on it. Let's see if I can find another one. Again, just look at the length. Let me just lay that out there. Look at the length of the root on that from here all the way to there. That is pretty big. So way too big for this module. It doesn't really matter, just sort of fold it up and just push it in, and then just get a little bit more compost in there like that. Pull it to the centre. It's tricky. Anyway, basically like that. Now seedlings, they're really tough, incredibly resilient, and you can just push them around and bend the roots and do whatever you want with them, and they will be just fine. So we're not going to do those, so get rid of those. We're going to do seeds direct, sown in the modules. Okay, so these holes, about 10, 12 millimeters deep, something like that. It really doesn't matter, the seeds don't care. And I'm just dropping 3 seeds per module. And obviously I'm doing this kind of one-handed. I wouldn't normally do it like this. But that's what we want to end up with. Just forget this stupid rule that says twice the depth of the seed for the hole. So there we go. Now these seedlings, it's middle of March now, and so these are going to be ready to plant out middle of April, and they're going to be ready to eat middle of May, maybe a little bit before then, but pretty close to summer. It's starting to get really warm by then, and so these are probably my last batch of true spinach, and then I'll switch over to Asian spinach. Now I have actually got a little ebook that goes through all the different types of spinach to use at different times of year, and that's worth a look, because it's really not a good idea, I don't think, to use true spinach in the warmer weather. So, you know, June, July and early August, and just because it just goes to seed so quickly. Now there's a lot of confusion about watering. Now a lot of people will say bottom water, get the compost completely saturated, and I don't think that's a good idea at this time of year. It's definitely not a good idea in winter or when it's cold in autumn. You basically want to water according to the conditions. So when it's cold and damp, you just don't need that much water. You need a little bit more than I put on so far, but not a huge amount. Moisten the compost, but don't fully saturate it. Now if you were doing it in summer, or you're putting these in a greenhouse where it's really warm and not going back for a week, then yeah, fully saturate it, because the compost's going to get hot and dry out really quickly. But if you're putting these, you know, in a relatively cool place, and I recommend a cool bedroom or a north-facing windowsill or something like that in the house, where it's about 18, 19 degrees, something like that, then that's the kind of amount of water you want. As it's not a huge amount. The tray is, you know, it's reasonably heavy, but it's not really heavy. As I say, it's not fully saturated. I think you get a lot of germination problems when you get the compost oversaturated, and you have to start playing games like mixing your compost with perlite or vermiculite to improve the drainage. Well, you don't need to improve the drainage if you don't oversaturate the soil in the first place. So these have all been lightly watered, and to be honest, they don't need any more water. But if I were to water them, this is the sort of water I would do every other day. So just about like that. That's enough. And, you know, basically with the compost that I use, and you can find all the details of that in my sowing guide, I'll put a link to that in the description below, then you can tell when it needs watering, because the top of the compost will just go nice and dry looking, and that's basically what we want after watering. Now when it comes to planting out, I think you still need to put your spinach under fleece at this time of year, or under plastic. I wouldn't put it in a polytunnel, it's too warm in a polytunnel, but in a cold frame or a low tunnel that you can open up on warm days, that's just ideal. Spinach will definitely benefit from cover at this time of year, through to about April time, middle of April, when you can probably take all your covers off and the spinach will just thrive with all that the weather can throw at it. In April it doesn't mind frost at all. In fact, frost just sweetens it up a little bit. It will knock the growth back a little bit, but not by very much. So yeah, that's it. I mean, as I say, I really like cold frames for spinach. I think they're absolutely ideal because they're so easy to vent, they're so cheap, they don't get quite as hot as a low tunnel, but low tunnels are great as well. And yeah, so they're really good. And fleece is not to be underestimated. It's really cheap and quite convenient, and yeah, we use it quite a lot for spinach a little bit later on in the year. Right now, polythene I think is best. So take a look in the description of this video for more details and everything that I've talked about today. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen, Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.